Welcome back to the Bro Show, the BroThrow YouTube show. Chad, we are back. NFL Week 1 lines are finally here. Opening night, Ravens and the Chiefs, Super Bowl champions, back in action to kick the season off. Thursday night football. Let's just jump right into it. What do you got in this game?
I got the Chiefs, man. Reigning champions. Almost everyone's returning. You look at the Ravens this year, and the team that got them to the AFC Championship, that got their MVP last year in Lamar Jackson, they've lost 3 offensive linemen, 3 of their starters this year, and I think that's going to be a much bigger deal than people realize. Lamar needs that. He needs that protection. Derrick Henry doesn't necessarily. He's got a history of having bad offensive linemen and producing. But when you look at what's going on between these two teams, I'm going to take Andy Reid over any coach in the NFL. I'm going to take Xavier Worthy as a rookie, coming in with a 4.21, the fastest 40 time in NFL Combine history. He's an immediate starter. He's an immediate threat. They're going to be able to spread the ball, and I think they're going to break this defense. They're not going to break them down totally, but I think that 3 points. We look at the public numbers, and that's not always a great indicator. But even early on this year, it seems to be heavy on Baltimore, and I'm just not going to take that chance at home, at Arrowhead. I like the Chiefs, man.
Yeah, this game is really confusing to me. I feel like 3 is a very, very fair number. I mean, being at home, it's tough to pick against Kansas City outright. They're, as you said, they're Super Bowl champs. They got the best player in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes. They added Xavier Worthy in the first round to try to take on that Tyreek Hill role that they had missing from that offense. But I really like what Baltimore did, bringing in Derrick Henry, bringing in that stud running back to go along with Lamar Jackson. That's going to cause defenses to have to play 7, if not 8 in the box, because otherwise Jackson and Henry are just going to destroy you on the ground. And that should open up opportunities down the field for guys like Zay Flowers, maybe even Mark Andrews on crossing routes. I mean, Baltimore has weapons all over the field. And John Harbaugh, is still one of the best coaches in the NFL alongside Andy Reid. So I think this is going to be a hyper competitive game. I'm looking at the over-under at 47, kind of suggesting it might be a little bit lower scoring than we might expect with these two teams. 24-24 hits the over. And if either team is not going to get to 24, I kind of feel like that favors Baltimore. But I don't know. I don't know if I want to pick against Kansas City here. I might just tail with you on Kansas City or stay away. It's going to be a fun game opening night for sure.
Yeah, everyone talks about the Baltimore defense, but let's not forget about Chris Jones and company. I mean, Kansas City still has one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL. Again, they're NFL Super Bowl champions. So, I mean, I know that I looked at their track record over the last few years. There have been some upsets. There have been some bad games in the first week, but I'm looking for a continuation of the end of last season, and let's ride with them.
Yeah, maybe it could be an under spot for sure. Well, the team that they beat in the Super Bowl last year was the San Francisco 49ers. They are on the other primetime bookend game this weekend, Monday Night Football, taking on Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. You're very high on the Jets this season, but I am riding with San Francisco in this game, even coming off that Super Bowl hangover. I know you see a lot of stats out there about the team that loses the Super Bowl has a really bad against the spread record in week 1, and even a lot of the times go on to miss the playoffs. But I just don't see that with this 49ers team. I am such a huge fan of Kyle Shanahan, of Christian McCaffrey, even of Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy is super underrated, which is crazy for a guy that I believe was top 5 in the MVP voting last season. But people still, like to talk smack on him, call him a system quarterback. I think that if he's a system quarterback, then the system went leaps and bounds better when he took over. Brandon Ayuk has returned to this team. He has signed an extension. They got Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. The Jets have a great defense, but the 49ers offense, I think, is going to be too much for them in this case. I don't know if Rodgers, even in his return, is going to be able to go against the 49ers studly defense led by Nick Bosa, Fred Warner in the middle. I'm just too high in San Francisco this year that I'm going to take them at home in a number that, 4.5 is more than a field goal, less than a touchdown. That's kind of the zone where Vegas doesn't really know what's going to happen, but I feel confident the 49ers should take them here in the spot.
Yeah, you nailed it. The 4.5 is kind of keeping me to stay away. But like you said, if I'm going to lean, I'm going to lean on the 49ers this week. When you look at what's gone on in the preseason, Christian McCaffrey's had a calf strain like he has every year. But reports are in. He's back. He's good, full health. But even bigger than Christian McCaffrey is Trent Williams. Trent Williams signed. He's back with the team. One of the best offensive linemen for the last 10 years in the NFL. That's a huge play. Yes, I am high on the Jets this year, but if there's going to be a team that's going to give them fits, I think it's going to be San Francisco in this opening week. You know, Kyle Shanahan is one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. He's had months to scheme for this, and not only their offense has all of the weapons, their defense is one of the best. You know, we keep saying one of the best, but when you look at Fred Warner, he may be the best linebacker in the NFL. Nick Bosa certainly is in the top 3 or 4 in pass rushers. I just think that when it comes to scoring points this game, I think it's going to be a higher scoring than we would think, but I would probably lean San Francisco with you.
Well, from another game that has, reasonably good offenses and defenses, we head to your favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys, going to Cleveland to take on the Browns. Browns maybe a little surprisingly in the spot, -2.5. No Nick Chubb for them in this game. What are you thinking here?
Well, again, early season, you're going to look at, or at least I do. I like to look at what the projection of what the spread should be, and I like to look at what the public's looking at. What's the obvious choice for the public? And what it seems to be right now is the Cowboys, which is a little bit scary, but I'm still going to go with the Cowboys. They've had a pretty good track record. Week 1, the last few years, with this team, with Mike McCarthy, and it just seems like it may be one of those bait and switches. So early on, I'm going to look at Deshaun Watson's arm health. He had surgery last year. He's been kind of struggling with the snap count, and he's just not the same Deshaun Watson of old when he was with the Texans. So I think when you pair up the quarterback play, I'm going to go with Dak. I'm going to go with Dak and CD over Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper and some of the other weapons they have. You mentioned Nick Chubb's out. That's a huge thing. But Jerome Ford's actually a really great running back. He was very handy for them last year when Chubb went out. And the Browns were a really good team. They made the playoffs last year, but they made the playoffs under Joe Flacco. So if Joe Flacco was under center, that might be a little bit different for me. But looking between these two teams, both of them have a top defense. The Browns have probably, you could argue, the best defense with their front and their secondary, which is going to give a lot of teams a lot of low-scoring opportunities throughout the season. But the Cowboys are no slouch on defense either. The Cowboys were top 5 last year in points allowed. They've got Trayvon Diggs back. They've got mostly a healthy defense. They lost their quarterback in Lewis a few weeks ago for 6 to 8 weeks. But they've got a little bit of depth, and they've got again, one of the best pass rushers in the league with Lawrence and Parsons. So week 1, I'm going to ride with my boys, and let's go get that W.
I view these two teams as very similar to each other, right? Both are having weaknesses in the running game right now with Nick Chubb being out, and Dallas, they have to go back to Ezekiel Elliott or Rico Dowdle or Dalvin Cook. Like, none of those options in 2024 are super enticing. They each have a stud defensive lineman in Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett, arguably the best two in all of football. But when I look at the coaching factor here, Dallas lost Dan Quinn, their defensive coordinator from the last couple seasons, over to Washington as their new head coach. And I'm a little concerned how that's going to affect them. I think the guy was a great coordinator, and he really brought the defense to new heights that they hadn't seen before. Trayvon Diggs, as you mentioned earlier, he's a great corner. But one of my big concerns with him is he loves to go for interceptions, which, don't get me wrong, he's great at. He leads the league in interceptions, but a lot of times he goes for them a little bit too early, and that leads to big plays. So we know that Watson loves to throw to the number 1 receiver on his team. He's done that his entire career. I think that Cooper could have a huge game here in this type of spot without Quinn, without Nick Chubb. So I would actually look towards the over in this game. We have a very low over-under of 41. As you said, both teams had phenomenal defenses last year, but we don't know how they're going to perform this year. I would look towards the over. And I think if the game goes over, that does favor Dallas. So I would lean towards them as well.
Here we go.
All right. For teams that have big changes from last year, the Vikings heading to MetLife Stadium to take on the Giants. Quarterback changes for the Vikings. Giants wish they had a quarterback change, but they're riding with Daniel Jones. He brings in number 1 receiver, 6th overall pick, Malik Neighbors. Guy is a total stud. One of the best receivers in all of college football last year. I expect them to look his way early and often. The line here is in favor of the Vikings by 1.5 on the road. And generally in the NFL, anytime a home team is getting points, you have to look at them. I think people are hating too much on the Giants. I know Daniel Jones is not the greatest quarterback in the world, but Brian Daboll is a really, really solid coach. He knows how to make do with less. I mean, keep in mind, this team was rocking with Tommy DeVito, Tyrod Taylor, Saquon Barkley was injured all last season for a while. And they still went out and figured out ways to get it done. Now you're bringing in better guys than they had last year. You're taking on a Vikings team with Sam Darnold now at quarterback on the road. They've had a lot of offseason, off the field situations. Jordan Addison got arrested. One of their draft picks passed away. I'd like the Giants here getting points at home for sure.
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those hold your nose bets, right? Like you said, at home, take the points. Sam Darnold, kind of stinky. Daniel Jones, kind of stinky. So that's really all there is to it. I mean, the only other thing that I would point out, kind of a key in this game, is Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Bobby Oakreeg. The Giants are going to have a really solid front seven. And they had one last year. Brian, like you said, Brian Daboll, 2 years ago, I think, was in the running for Coach of the Year, and he took a team that had not that many notables, to the playoffs. They exited in the first round, but he took them there. And so I think that's within him, and I think he's a good coach. And I just don't believe in this Vikings team this year. There's just too much noise. There's just too much question around their personnel and how Sam Darnold is going to be able to lead this team. And he hasn't proved that he can lead any team. So let's go ahead and take the Giants, man.
Well, with Sam Darnold taking over the Vikings, that will be a familiar sight for these next two teams, Pittsburgh and Atlanta, each rolling with new signal callers, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson. I feel like it's always tricky in these type of games with two new quarterbacks on two new teams, but you like one of these two teams here.
I do. Yeah, I like the Falcons -3. I just don't think the Steelers are going to score a lot of points this year. They've struggled in the offseason to figure out who their starter is, whether it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And, Russell Wilson 10 years ago was one of the best players in the NFL. But he's just not the same guy anymore. And I just don't think that they're going to be able to score the amount of points that they're going to need to keep up in this game. When you look at Atlanta has one of the best offensive lineman squads in the NFL. And they've got Bijan Robinson running the ball. Primarily, they've got Tyler Algier. They've got Drake London, Kyle Pitts, who I just read has a little bit of a hammy issue. There's a big shocker. But they've just got so many weapons. They've got this offensive line, and I think they're going to be able to move the ball. I think they're going to be able to score points where I don't think that the Steelers are going to be able to. You look at them last year, and there was a lot of games that came down strictly based on their defensive play, their defensive scoring touchdowns for them when they couldn't. So, is Russell Wilson an upgrade from Kenny Pickett? I don't know. I thought Kenny Pickett would be good last year, and he just didn't get it done. And then one more thing that I thought was really interesting is you got Arthur Smith, who was the head coach in Atlanta. He's moved over to play calling at the Steelers. And, you read reports how he's going to help them to prepare. But this is a totally, completely different offense. Arthur Smith, he knows the team, but he doesn't know these schemes that they're running now. He doesn't know how they're going to approach the game. So when it comes down to it, give me the team with the better offensive line, with more offensive weapons, and with a very much improved defense. TJ Watt's still going to be He's still going to do his thing. The Steelers are still going to be really tough on that side of the ball. But I think that Atlanta is going to hold the Steelers to 10, maybe two scores, 10, 14 points. Well, I think Atlanta is going to score a few times throughout the game.
Yeah, the Falcons definitely have a lot of really intriguing skill position players. Like, these are always guys in fantasy that everyone is always salivating over. And now it definitely seems like they have a real quarterback in Cousins to lead them to the promised land. No shade towards Desmond Ridder, but I mean, he wasn't getting anybody anywhere. Now, I actually am a big fan of Michael Penix Jr. I do think he is the future for this Falcons team, and I think that future is coming up very, very soon. I think he will be the starting quarterback for this team by week 8, honestly. And so in order for that to happen, you probably would have to think that Cousins has to struggle a little bit. Now, in this first game with the team, obviously, we don't know what his level of trust, what his level of connection is with all these guys. And going up against the Steelers defense that is very well coached, has been together a long time, and has a lot of studs on it, I am a little bit concerned. The spread here is only 3 points, right? And in the NFL, home field advantage is worth 3 points. So, the books are saying that these two teams are pretty much about equal in talent. And I think most people look at that and say, well, no, Atlanta clearly has a talent advantage. So the books are saying that I think they have to be going with the Steelers' defensive advantage there. I do agree with you that Wilson is definitely past his prime. Fields is, I'm a Bears fan. Fields is not the answer. So I think if the Steelers are going to win this game or keep it close, it's going to be in a low-scoring slugfest. I would go with the under here for sure. That would be my pick here. But I do think it's going to be a close competitive game. I do see more worlds where the Falcons blow them out than the Steelers blow them out. So I can definitely see why the Falcons would be a good pick here. But I'm going with the under here as well. And then finally, in our last game of the week for this video, we got the Jaguars staying in Miami, taking on the Dolphins, 3-point favorites here for the Dolphins. And both teams here had pretty solid seasons last year. The only reason I'm going with the Dolphins here is because I like their offensive moves. And by moves, I mean the personnel that they've managed to retain a lot more than Jacksonville. Jacksonville went out and lost Calvin Ridley, replaced him with Brian Thomas. And I do like Brian Thomas, but he is a rookie, right? And I don't know if we can necessarily expect him to take on that level of responsibility right away. Meanwhile, Miami kept everybody. They're now fully healthy at the running back position. Mostert, A-Chain, and they even got a couple backups that are expected to see a little bit of work. I know fantasy and prop bettors are not excited to hear that, but that should help keep all of them fresh for maximum effort. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. The Jaguars' pass defense was horrible last year. I think they're going to have a hard time keeping up. Trevor Lawrence has been good, but not like the level of, generational talent we were necessarily expecting coming out of college. And I want to see him get it done here. I will take Miami at home in this spot.
Yeah, this was another one that I'd kind of flagged for my picks this week. You beat me to it, so I'll let you have it. But this is one of my favorite picks too. Miami at home, their entire skill set position, like their group, they all run 4-3s. As a defensive coordinator, how do you cover that? How do you defend all three running backs in their backfield, including their rookie Jaden Wright? Those guys all run 4.340s. You have Jalen Waddle, who's one of my favorite receivers in the league. He's underrated because of Tyreek Hill there, but if he was the star there, he would be a top 5 receiver in the NFL. So just simply the amount of firepower that they have, and with Mike McDaniel and his scheme, he's so creative. They just find ways to gain yards, to score touchdowns, and win football games. I'd like to see them in a step up this year, and I'd like to see them really compete with the Jets, for their division title. And I think it's going to start here. You look at Jacksonville, Doug Peterson, he does a great job with his offenses. He spreads the ball around. In fact, he's one of the worst coaches to have, like you mentioned, for fantasy football. But they lost Calvin Ridley. And I think, like you said, Brian Thomas Jr., who's my favorite rookie this year, he's like 6'4", 210, runs a 4.340, 4.440. He's going to be a good step up for him, but he doesn't have that veteran skill set that Calvin Ridley does. So I'd like to see the Miami by a touchdown here.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to bet on any of the picks we gave out today, any of your favorite teams in NFL, NBA, MLB, college football, go over to BroThrow.com/YouTube to sign up and place your first bet right away. Who knows? You might even take some of our action if you disagree with us. But Chad, thank you for the picks. We will see you everyone in the next one. Peace.